Spotlight Business with me, Philip Nanfuri, and a very good evening and welcome to tonight's edition. We'll be looking into the oil industry, the petroleum sector, and we'll be looking at the downstream sector where you and I essentially go to purchase our products. So when we go to the filling stations to fill up our tanks, we'll be looking at the pricing that goes on in there. What are some of the key terms, some of the jargons that are floating around that we may not understand? We want to break them down this evening and look at that. And look at why there have been complaints in recent times about more or less lowering prices of oil on the international market, and it doesn't really correspond on this side of the world or in the Ghanaian markets. Then we'll look at the upstream side. That looks at the main oil extraction. And we want to see whether we have really realized the value of the oil industry since commercial production began in 2010, and then we had the first lifting in 2011. I'm sure you all know we discovered oil in commercial quantities in 2007. So we're looking at an odd 14 years since oil was discovered in commercial quantities in Ghana. We want to just delve into some of these issues and find out if indeed we are making progress and we are really utilizing the oil as some call black gold in Ghana. If you look at other parts of the world, particularly the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, or the Gulf countries, you realize that they are really utilizing or have utilized their oil to propel their economies. What about Ghana? We thought the story was going to be the same. Why hasn't it been? We'll explore that tonight. And for my guest in studio, I have with me Mr. Kojo Poku. He's the CEO of Gasop Oil. He's here in studio with me. Thank you for joining us. Then we also have Mr. Duncan Amwa, who is Executive Secretary for COPEC. And then he'll be joining us on the phone line. And via Zoom, we have Gideon Ofosu-Piasa, Sustainable Energy Extractives and Climate Specialist. I think he'll be joining us via Zoom. So 3 guests, all well-versed in the oil industry. And we're going to be starting our discussion shortly. We'll start off from the downstream side of things and work our way to the top. So without further ado, I'll come straight to Mr. Kojo Poku and thank him for joining us this fine evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening to you too. So I'll start off with an article you put together. It was published on my journal online on 22nd December 2020.
Okay.
And it says, Is petroleum price deregulation working for Ghanaians? Now, to the uninitiated, when we talk about petroleum price deregulation, what are we referring to?
Okay. In the past, petroleum products, because they're very sensitive national product, it was only government that was importing. We started off not really importing. We were importing crude, and Tema Oil Refinery was the one that was refining the product and giving it to Ghanaians. Tema Oil Refinery is about 45,000 barrels a day production. So from time immemorial, government will bring in crude, give it to Tema Oil Refinery, refines it, and sell it on the local market. Then it got to a point where our local demand was more than what Tema Oil Refinery was doing, even at full capacity. So then the government came up with a regime or a license called BDC, bulk distribution companies. And the BDCs were now licensed to be able to now import finished products to supplement what TOR was producing. So at that time, I think there was only 3 companies that will bring in the fuel. But what was happening was that because government knows the shocks that petroleum prices have on the economy, government regulates what price you charge. So since government themselves bring in the crude oil, Tema Oil Refinery will be asked to sell at a certain price. And even if there was a differential, government absorbs it. So at that point, people realized that government, in a way, was subsidizing petroleum products. So we had that over a period. And it got to a point where government was like, look, I'm no longer going to set the petroleum prices. Because you know that there were a lot of times when we all know that, there's shortage of fuel on the market because people have heard that government is going to increase prices and they want to make more on what's in the tank. So they'll tell you there's no fuel. Then government will announce an increase in price, then everybody will increase their price. That has to stop because the mechanism for setting the prices was at a disadvantage of Ghanaians. And then as a result, Tamoyo Refinery was not making money, was making losses. And even the BDCs, when they came on board and they were bringing in products, when there is an FX differential, government will say, I will absorb it. Where maybe they import the thing at 4 cedis dollar to the cedi. Then by the time they come back, it's 4 cedis, 20 pesos, government absorbs the 20 pesos change. So all that accumulated in 2015 when the government decided that no, MPA is going to now roll out the downstream petroleum price deregulation, where there will be a pricing mechanism, a deregulated market where everybody who is licensed as a BDC can import fuel based on their pricing, how the margins they got, what they brought it in at, sell it to the OMC, and the X pump, which is what me and you buy at the pump, will be set independent of government. But there's an exercise. Every 2 weeks, there's a window. In that window, all the OMCs and the BDCs would bring in products, but then share their pricing with MPA. Okay. What they do is that they give them what they call an indicative price. So the OMCs have indicative price, the top, upper limit and lower limit, within which they can play and charge anything. Then the BDCs, the ex-refinery, which is what the BDCs bring in and sell to the OMCs, would also be set, not set by MPA, but MPA just basically supervise to make sure that we are not being charged astronomical prices unwarrantedly. That system is what you call the deregulation, where government is no longer setting the petroleum prices for Ghanaians.
And in your article, in the first paragraph, you said it is sad to know that this policy is not working for the average Ghanaian. Then you go on to say we all had hopes that this new policy will reduce prices and create competition among OMCs, that's the oil marketing companies. But the reality is now that they have become a cartel without a set competition. Mm-hmm. When you went further to elaborate, so you gave some breakdown, and I like how you said you don't like to confuse your audience with complicated calculations and statements, so you keep it very simple. And you went on to talk about the premiums. Premium can be as high as $80 per metric ton, if I'm right. That's empty, depending on the pricing window. This supplier's premium is factored into the pump price paid by me and you. Due to COVID-19, petroleum prices on the world market collapsed. In March 2020, petrol was sold at $612 per metric ton, and the average pump price in Ghana was $540. Then during the pandemic lockdown, the world petrol price tumbled to $164 per metric ton, but the pump price in Ghana only went down to 4 cedis. This relationship said, why is it so? Why is this
so basically, one of the key factor or the key pillars for successful deregulation is competition. Various companies have to compete with each other on pricing. We, the Ghanaians, buying products. That's why at every forecourt of an OMC or a filling station, you realize that there is a signage that displays the price. In Ghana, there is a very old adage where people think that when petrol is cheap, it's not good. It's utterly rubbish. Okay? Everybody buys their fuel from the same tank. It's all imported and put in boxes. So, yes, in the past, when MPA was not doing good supervisory, some people were, when they received their fuel in their tanks, they will adulterate it. But adulteration has really reduced to a minimal, because these days there are sensors and there are good supervisory system in place so that nobody is mixing their fuel. So that loyalty, that patronage to the big companies, the big four, is unnecessary, because there are smaller companies which are new. And even today, when the prices are high, the smaller companies trying to look for market space are doing much cheaper prices than the big companies. So you look at Shell, Total, Puma, and Gel. If you see what they charge, it's outrageous. And they are always at the upper limit. Meanwhile, there are smaller companies like Goodness and all these other companies who charge much lesser, sometimes 30 pesos per liter lesser than what these big companies are charging. So pricing was to be a major factor of deregulation. But we, the consumers, was to patronize cheaper prices as against higher prices. So the guy who has so much fuel and he sees the pump next door always getting attended to, there's a long queue and his forecourt is empty, then he would also adjust his price to compete with the guy. In the UK, somebody can drive about 2-3 miles just because somebody have told him, look, this Sainsbury's or this place down the road is cheaper. So the person will go to that place to buy fuel just because it's maybe 10p or 20p cheaper. But Ghana, the trotro people, the taxis are complaining of high fuel prices. But when they are at red, because I 1 gallon, so when he buys the 1 gallon, when he's red, he doesn't have time to go and look for another station. So he just buys where it's closer. That is where the deregulation had failed. So if it was to work, the competition between the OMCs, the pricing at the forecourt, would me and you should patronize the cheaper fuel. And it's not too late. And that is why some of programs like this, we help to educate the consumer that always look out for the cheaper price. And it doesn't mean that it has to come from the 4 big companies. All the smaller companies who are offering you cheaper prices, their products are not adulterated. They are as good as the ones being sold by the 4 companies. So that is where in the article that you read, I go on to say that if deregulation to work, it should be a two-edged sword. When prices are going up, fine. International, everybody is in the business to make money.
Yeah.
So I don't expect a BDC to import and come and sell to Ghanaians cheaper. We can't sustain that. But what we've realized is that anytime there is a downward trend, when the price on the international market keeps going down, the OMCs don't give us that savings. The typical example is what you just read.
Yeah.
Before COVID-19, in March 2020, the ex-pump price that me and you were buying was 5 cedis 40 pesos. Then, at that time, the platform at which everybody now trade petrol or diesel is called Plat.
Yeah.
At Plat, the metric ton for petrol was $612 per metric ton. Okay? That is the cost of the product. Let's not add any margins to it. Just the cost of the product, the key element. Then COVID happens. Then the price tumbled all the way down to $164.
Yeah.
So the key component of the price build-up is the cost of the product. It's gone from 612 to 164. That is a 73% reduction. What Ghanaians saw at the pump was only 26% reduction. So the OMCs and the BDCs, or more or less the BDCs and the OMCs, kept the difference. And when we asked, why is it that when prices are going up, you are quick to increase it, but when it's coming down, you are slow to decrease it? Then we are told that, oh, they are recovering their losses. And I'm like, what losses? Nobody in this country is in the business of losing money. Not the OMCs and the BDCs anyway.
Okay. And I like how I want to go to Mr. Dankanamwa, but let me just add this. At the end of your article, I like how you put it. You said, in 2021, we're not going to sit down, make them cheat us anymore. I think that was very light, but important at the end of the article.
I'm sure Duncan will like that statement.
Let's go to Mr. Dankanamwa. He's the Executive Secretary of COPEC. He deals with the consumers. If he's on the line, can you hear me, Mr. Amwa?
Let me say good evening to you. Good evening to my brother Joe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amwa. So, Mr. Poko has been making his submissions, and just at the tail end, something that struck me, and for consumers, before you make your submissions on other points he's made, out of curiosity, why is it that when we see other places have low prices, we still want to go to the Shells, to the Goyles, to the big ones that we think have all the right stuff? Why is it that in the mind of a consumer, that thing still persists?
I'm glad you probably used a very latter word, persist. Perceptions do play quite a critical role in consumer preferences or choices. And so sometimes you might perceive probably Mercedes to be far stronger than, let's say, another vehicle, right? What you may find, however, is that some of the other vehicles are even far more rugged, far more luxurious. But there's something called Mercedes, so everybody wants to buy that brand. That's the thing also in the fuels market, where you find some people basically looking for brands much more than looking for price sensitivity. And so times when you expect people to discriminate their purchases purely on pricing, you find people still trooping to even the stations that are selling for much higher market value. Clearly, consumer preferences, I think, is a whole science that will take quite a long time to be able to understand. But again, these things are explained simply with the fact that people sometimes buy brands more than they buy the product. Let me also be quick to add, or hasten to add, that the very mere fact somebody sells cheaper doesn't make them good. The very mere fact somebody sells cheaper. In petroleum, you know something called flash points. Basically, or your octane number.
Increase it.
So your octane rating, as far as your petroleum product is concerned, sometimes determine the quality or otherwise. For Ghanaian standards, we've agreed that for petrol you are doing what you will call the RON 91, which is like the baseline. There are times you would find other stations selling higher octane, which is much, better product. So octane 93, octane 95 will be much better than octane 91, although they are all products and they would all work in your car. Some are much more quality or of a superior quality. And then again, you would also find a situation where minimum 91. Sometimes you may come across products that may not even meet the 91. When you find a few unscrupulous ones, very unscrupulous ones, who are simply all out to make money and nothing more. And so you may find some fuel stations engage in these adulterating products here and there, adding all kinds of, lubricants and chemicals to the product just to boost volumes in order that they may be able to boost their revenues or monies or returns. And so we would also be a bit cautious. Yes, low pricing, very good. It doesn't also mean that all those selling higher prices are selling, superior products. No. There are times you may even find someone charging more and yet delivering a lower quality product. So it's a mix, and that is how it comes down to choices or preferences as far as consumers are concerned. But then again, I think that I agree with Kojo. People ought to be a bit price sensitive. If we all decided that we are going to shun those who charge above the ceiling or off the average market, I'm quite certain that that in itself would also serve as a certain price barrier above which, companies may not want to price beyond. Unfortunately, again, a growing trend is that some of the companies have also grown a certain nut for just pricing below the market leader Goil. And so whatever prices Goil will put on the market, you would expect that because they will probably be the bigger with a larger, share and a larger spread across the country. Once they put a price, the other OMCs do not want to go above them. So they normally will quote certain nominal variations as to Goal is 5 points, whatever. Somebody will come and say, I'm doing 4 points, just so as to attract more people to their forecourt. And so that also ought to be duly noted. Sometimes you find people pricing using Goal as a benchmark. That is also a development with deregulation.
Okay. Mr. Amwa, before I take my commercial break, in Mr. Poku's article, he says, in 2021, I urge the new government to take a critical look at this policy to be fair to Ghanaians. Government has a big role to play in changing the law to benefit the original Ghanaian, not big companies like BDCs and OMCs. I would presume or assume that you agree with his sentiments. However, my question here is, how quickly do we think government can get this done? Or how quickly can we get this done to ensure that we benefit the most from the deregulation policy?
So, yes, let me affirm your belief or suspicion. I totally agree with Kojo Poku when he says that we need to change the law, not to favor the players, but to favor the ordinary Ghanaian. I have said on a number of platforms, including yours, that you have a pricing policy that is akin to putting your bicycle on a hill or a mountain. The most natural phenomenon is that you will probably get it on a free, slope or a free ride. It will just go downward. If you have a pricing policy set with three key variables, right? Two of which most times will work against Ghanaians. The third one is at the behest of finance ministers. I'm talking of the tax component.
Yes.
The other two, international market prices, and then your CD dollar. I don't remember in recent history when the CD really appreciated against the dollar, where the CD probably moved from exchange of 3:1 to exchange of 1:1.
Yeah.
So you would hardly, sometimes it stabilizes. Yes, the rate of depreciation would, stabilize, but it hardly appreciates. And so once you have almost a natural phenomenon or occurrence where the CD is likely to depreciate, and once it depreciates, the trotro driver will pay more. Once the CD depreciates, Kojo Poku will have to pay more at the pumps. I have to pay more, you pay more. Then that in itself is a problem. International market, figures, they are quite almost, they're quite predictable. So you have times and seasons. Your first quarter normally pressure. When geopolitical factors also push your prices, either the bullish sentiment become quite higher, or sometimes the bearish would push prices down. You can put these together and say that the geopolitical factors, although a bit predictable, would almost always work against us, because we have set our prices such that the moment international market prices move by $1 and the city depreciates by a peswa, you would have to pay more. So the two of the three key variables that determine eventual pump pricing are almost always likely to work against the Ghanaian. And these are things that we would need to work as a country to eliminate. Other than this, I'm afraid we would have this conversation 1,000 times over. The fear now is that Platts benchmarks are hovering around 450, 470, that region. And yet, we are already at 23 cedis per gallon as a country. So just imagine if it should hit 500, if it should hit 550, if it should hit the 600 region that it was before COVID outset, where prices took a downward trajectory, then we are in for some real trouble, because already you are 23 Ghana cedis per gallon. That is a signal that if it gets to 500, we could cross 24, 25. If it gets to 600, we are probably looking at 26, 27, 28. I do not think that the Ghanaian is in such a very good position to be paying much, much more for fuel than we currently do. At $1 per liter for a developing country as ours, we still believe that is quite too high, and something ought to be done about it.
Okay. That's Duncan Amwa, Executive Secretary of COPEC. In studio is Mr. Kojo Poku, who is the CEO of Gas Up Oil. When we take our commercial break, we'll come to Gideon Ofosu Piesa, Sustainable Energy Extractives and Climate Specialist. This is Spotlight Business Edition. We're taking a quick break. We'll be right back.
You need to learn.
But I'm more interested in drawing.
How are you going to be part of the business if you don't learn?
You just don't understand.
Morning. Anyone for some Lipton?
The rich taste of Lipton awakens body and mind.
Let me have a look at your drawings. Son, these designs are amazing.
Lipton Yellow Label Tea. Awaken to what really matters.
You're welcome back from the break. This is Spotlight Business. We've been discussing, I beg your pardon, or we've been engaging in a discussion of deregulation of petroleum prices, what you pay for at the pumps. And I hope you are following closely the discussion. We want to go to Gideon Ofosu-Piesa, Sustainable Energy Extractives and Climate Specialist. Do we have Gideon on the line, please? Or via Zoom? Gideon, can you hear me? Hello, Gideon. If you can hear me, kindly unmute your sound, please. Hello, Gideon. Do we have you now?
Loud and clear.
Yeah. Do we have you now? Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us on Spotlight Business. I want to take your thoughts on what both of my guests have said and your own submissions you have to make on our deregulation policy.
Okay, so thank you very much, and then good evening to your viewers. I would also want to touch on the reason why sometimes, though we have the deregulation policy, we do not have that prices coming down as it ought to be. Now, Mr. Amwa touched on the issue of the RON, the octane level. And then usually the octane level is usually a sustainability bit. What it means is that you are providing with a high-grade fuel, whereby this high-grade fuel would be gentle on your vehicle engine, and then would also emit less. And then as a matter of fact, because it emits less, it means that you'll be contributing to saving the environment. Mm-hmm. And then as a matter of fact, there would also be some efficiency in the rate of depletion or burning of that fuel. So though there will be deregulation, there will be various prices, there will be competition in that. If an oil marketing company is offering a higher grade, and now we have around 97, we even have around 98 in the Malaysians and then all that, you are going to pay more. Mm-hmm. There is also the element of the lack of education, I guess, which most Ghanaians do not know. And I believe that this platform is very, very important to educate them on some of these things. That if you want to buy fuel, try to compare prices and then try to buy at the filling station, which has lower price. But of course, if you want to contribute to sustainability, then of course you would want to go for a higher price which has a higher run number. Now, sometimes to looking at the exigencies of the moment, you may not have option than to probably locate the nearest fuel retail station and then refill. So that may also be a point. And then there is also the issue of proximity. So let's say we have OMCA, OMCB. OMCA is pricing lower across the board, but probably because they are in a particular area or on a particular street, you realize that actually OMCB could have brought its price very lower, but they feel that, okay, because I am close to OMCA, who has reduced it by 1 peso, and then maybe I can do 2 pesos, whilst they could have done 5 pesos. So sometimes looking at the area in which they find themselves and then the competition, these are some of the things that happen. And then in industry, there is a term that they call bili. This may be very, very cheap, and then bili is very, very cheap. You see that these should I say retail stations by the roadside, especially when you come to the Temple enclave, they are all over the place. Mm-hmm. They would offer you very cheap fuel, but it has question marks. Yeah, so these are my contributions. Again, with the impact of the deregulation, in addition to the competition, it has also contributed to reliable petroleum supply, because there was increase in demand, and then Tamayo refinery was not able to meet that demand, so the BDCs had to come in. So it has contributed to energy security in a way. But you would also realize that it has also had some massive impact on the vulnerable, because there is no kind of targeting measure to deal with petroleum consumers who may be of a certain low income bracket. So that is one of the challenges that has also come with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gideon. Let me come to Mr. Kotopoku. I saw you taking some notes. Do you have anything else to share?
Yes. I appreciate the explanation given on the various type of run, the octane levels to make the fuel cleaner. I think Shell and some of these companies offer premium fuel for newer cars that cannot use normal. Some people feel that, look, I want to use the high-grade fuel. Yeah. And when you get to the Shell filling station, they have 3 sets of fuel: the normal petrol, and then the high octane or the high-end fuel. Okay. That is normally 60 to 70 pesos more than the normal price. Guel and all the other stations, that's Efimax and all that. You see, I don't want to strain the conversation in that level. What I am saying is very simple. In February 2000, we had a price. Now, what I was writing down for everybody to understand it simple is that you have an equation, where in an equation you have variables. In your variable, if x plus y equals to z, and x is your international Platts price, which is the main component of the product because you are going to buy to come and sell it. Then on top of that, there are margins and taxes. Then there is the CD to the dollar. In 2020, the CD to the dollar has been very stable because there has been less trade. Mm-hmm. So as a result, the depreciation of CD to the dollar has not been that great. It's depreciated a little bit, but it's performed fairly as compared to other years. So we will take the CD to the dollar to be marginal. What I'm saying is, in one breath, one of the variables reduced by 73%, which it means that if you, as the company, being given all the margins, government taking all their taxes, the same thing that you were doing in February, yes, one component of that equation where you arrive at the X pump, which I buy, one component is 73% reduced. So if you plug that into that same equation, the company that was making a certain amount of money in February and was happy making that money in February, let's even assume you won't give me all the 73%. Give me 50%. Keep 26% because there's a windfall. Let's all enjoy. Okay? So you want to keep 23%, give me 50%. You only gave us 26%. That's my problem. So then, when the prices start going up, even if there is a 2% increase in the window, you increase it. The first window, there was about 5% increase. I could understand it. This particular window, I have no idea. Because the crude oil price is even cheaper now by about some cents. The Brent is cheaper now by some cents than it was in January. Platts is around the same, hovering maybe 5%, 2-3%. But the sensitivity with which you increase prices is not the same sensitivity with which you reduce prices. And that is why, because you see, I can make that argument because I'm a businessman. I like money and I work to make money. Everybody does that. So I understand why companies need to be profitable. I'm not saying that BDCs are not struggling. I'm not saying that OMs are not struggling. But Ghanaians cannot pay for their inefficiency. One of the things happening now is that they are, since deregulation started, they are giving what you call a supplier's margin. That supplier's margin takes care of their LC, their freight, their insurance, and their other costs. Yeah. In recent development in the market, the companies like BP and Trafigura and all that are not allowing the local companies to do LCs anymore. They do what you call an open credit. So they give you the product and you sell, and they nominate a bank and you pay. So in the past, when you have to go to bank to get an LC and all those things, really and truly doesn't exist anymore, because BP, looking to get a big chunk of the Ghana market, came in and started doing open credit. So companies in that $80 per metric ton suppliers credit that is being given to you, where if you are to go to the bank and do a LC, all those charges are now a savings to you. You're no longer doing open credit. So you're no longer doing LC. You're doing open credit with BP. So that's the problem I have. The BDCs are not being, they are really being motivated by more profit than what the sensitivity should be towards the economy of the Ghanaians.
Mr. Boku, in your submissions, something keeps on coming into my mind. The essence of our own oil refinery and Tema Oil Refinery. How would us having a active working, and I know in the past there have been some issues with Tema Oil Refinery, how would having a working oil refinery affect what's going on right now with this price issue?
Look, let me say this. We keep bringing Tema Oil Refinery anytime we have to talk about pricing. Bear in mind, Tema Oil Refinery has to also buy crude from the international market to refine. So even if we are to refine locally, yes, it will be because the ex-refinery will not be Amsterdam, ex-refinery will be Tema. So yes, in a way, if we were to have products at Tema Oil Refinery, we might be a bit cheaper than what is being imported. But the Tema Oil Refinery at the state that it is in now, the majority shareholder, who is government, has to make a decision. What do I do with Tema Oil Refinery? Everybody thinks that all Tema Oil Refinery needs is capital to import crude oil and it will work. No, I'm sorry, that's not true anymore. Tema Oil Refinery now, when there was a blowout in 2017, as I speak to you now, 4 years down the line, they've not been able to go from the 23 barrels a day to the 45 barrels that they're supposed to be. So they need money to fix that boiler to go back to the nameplate value of $43. Tema Oil Refinery is producing products which is off-spec. Off-spec in a sense that there is now a new specification which the world has set for diesel and petrol, the PMM value. Before, Tema Oil Refinery was 1,500 and it was much lower than the world market product that was being imported into Ghana. But then new refineries came up. They put in what is called a desulfurizer, and the desulfurizer now reduces the sulfur level in the products to less than 50. So products being brought in from Europe has a level of 50 or lower. Tema Oil Refinery is doing 1,500.
Wow.
African refineries and some part of the world, some refineries have been given, MPA has given a waiver to Tema Oil Refinery till I think 2022 or 2021, I'm not too sure. But it means that Tema Oil Refinery needs to put in a desulfurizer in the near future. Then it needs to build pipelines to be able to generate their own burners to refine. If not, they use part of the crude oil you give them to refine, and that goes towards their cost. So there is a lot of investment that needs to go into Tema Oil Refinery. Unless the government is prepared to sit and make a decision, we should stop talking about Tema Oil Refinery.
Let me pick Mr. Duncan Anwar's thoughts on this. If we have him on the line, do we have him on the line, please? Mr. Anwar, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Yes, yeah. Mr. Poku is just making some points on the viability of Tema Oil Refinery and the fact that we need a significant amount of injection into it, not only capital injection, but what someone would call the whole 9 yards, everything involved. What are your thoughts on the issues of Tema Oil Refinery and its impact on what's available for you and I to buy from the pumps?
Let me say that yes, we need some investment in the refinery to bring it to greater efficiency output. Unfortunately, We are not even interested in getting the refinery working in the first place. Talk less, making it much more efficient. We believe strongly that for an oil-producing country like Ghana, a refinery is indeed a must-have. You cannot continue to produce your thousands or hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil daily and then export everything to the European, region. Get refineries there busy, and then you go back for the product that they have refined. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The dollar cost, the logistical chain cost that is also being created would eventually be borne by the consumer. And so we have said that if in our petroleum agreement discussion, if we had a portion, even 3%, 5%, right, to be retained locally for our local refineries to process, you should be in a much better situation to save your city. Because now going back to Rotterdam to import finished products, you can't go with city. You would have to change or mop up a lot of millions of dollars from the Ghanaian economy to go and import the finished product back from Europe into the West African waters. What it does mean, and what I do think, is the business in there is the $70 supplier's premium, right? That is allowed for logistic handling for those who go to bring products here and there per metric. And so, of course, if he brings in 1,000 or 10,000 or 50,000 tons or whatever metric, that's some good money. If he pays all other things, insurance, freight, throughput and all of them, there will still be some money left somewhere. And so it looks as though we are not interested in fixing our refinery. We are rather interested in making excuses for why the refinery is not working. But I do think that if Dangote next door is willing to inject almost $12 billion in a new refinery, then there must be a strong business case for that kind of investment. Are we saying as a country we cannot invest $200 million in an existing 1 billion refinery just to bring it to a greater efficiency output so that we can allow the refinery also to serve as, some fuel security stopgap such that the logistics that we would have to bear as consumers could at least be reduced a bit because you are internalizing your production factors. Unfortunately, the refinery is run much more on political decisioning or decisions than on economics or on numbers. And I know Kojo would agree with me that if you decided that tour should be run by professionals and you delink the political interferences, they have some of the first-class engineers you could find anywhere. They have people who are spirited and able to work. They've had managing directors whose credentials, you can probably not finish writing in a day, right? But what do we see? They get in there, a party chairman comes and says, there's some product here that should ordinarily sell for 4 cedis. They say you should give it to me for 1 Ghana cedis. Right?
Yeah.
Somebody comes in from a constituency and thinks that this is an asset that they should milk. Until we decide to allow the refinery to run as an economic concern, it will be quite difficult for it to sustain itself in any meaningful, operation. And then again, if we also don't decide to invest something in there, like Kojo was talking about, some boilers in addition, some desulfurizers in addition, whatever to bring the refinery's finished product to the Euro 5 spec or to the kind of spec that we are getting from European refineries. We can do it here. Unfortunately, we are not interested as a country. We would rather ship all the dollars or change or convert the cedis to dollar just to go and bring finished products overseas and then add our suppliers' premium on there, and then eventually when the cedi also start losing, look at the cycle. We will convert the cedi to dollar, 400 million, ship it to suppliers, pay for the products that we've taken, and then we bring it down. And then we need the dollar again the next day. We say the cedi is not stable. And so because of that instability of the cedi, we do what we call forward, figures, forward calculation, forward rate. And so the dollar could be, 1 to 6 today. But if I'm doing my forward calculations, I'll do it at 6.2. Because the expectation is that by the time I'm done, selling that product in 21 days, in 28 days, in 45 days, I would not get the cedi exchanging to the dollar at 6.0. So I'll probably have to do forward forecast and add some 20%. Those are some of the things that clearly is creating the kind of pricing situation we have on our hands. But then again, until leadership decides that institutions like the oil refinery, institutions like ports, should be run purely as economic entities, where party chairmen will not go there, where honorable MPs will not take their cousins and constituency people and flood a place that would require 300 workforce with 1,000. If you don't do the normal things that other refineries across Europe and across the African continent are doing to be viable or sustainable, I could only imagine that we'll only be joking, no matter the investment you throw in there.
Okay. Mr. Hamwa, we will come back to you for your concluding statements as we are running down on time a bit. But let me go to Gideon. Let's move into another area of the conversation. The essence of this whole oil industry. We have been talking about the downstream side of things. We found oil, we started commercial production, and so far I'm looking at the semi-annual report of PIAC 2020, and it's telling me that total petroleum funds distributed since inception till end of June 2020 was 5.32 billion. Now, they give us the breakdown of which goes to the annual budget funding amount, the ABFA, the GNPC, the Ghana Stabilization Fund, and the Ghana Heritage Fund. Now, a very important part I see here is PIAC is saying that for the fourth time, and then Gideon, this is to you. For the fourth time, the Ministry of Finance failed to provide upfront utilization data for the compilation of PIAC reports. This makes it difficult to reconcile disbursements and expenditure and undermines the spirit of accountability as envisaged in the PRMA, that's the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, as amended. Gideon, do you think we need a reworking of this entire PRMA law? What is wrong there? What do we need to do? Does the finance minister have too much power in the discretions when it comes to where we are spending the money? A few years ago, we had amortization and other issues as the priority. Now we have free SHS. What do you think needs to change with this whole revenue management of our petroleum industry? Is Gideon there?
Hello?
Yeah, Gideon.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to inform you that the current Petroleum Revenue Management Act is undergoing review. We at civil society, we have made some inputs. Key stakeholders, the Bank of Ghana, the Ministry of Finance, PIAC, other civil societies have made input. So the PRMA is undergoing review to make it robust. Especially it's been about 10 years since we started oil and gas production. We need to look at our laws again to make it sensitive and then robust to ongoing changes. With the amount of money that you mentioned, we've really rigged in a lot. If you want to do a simple mathematics, if you are looking at the cost of the Kwame Nkrumah interchange, Dubai, at about $94 million US, assuming if you were using this revenues for that, it could have done about 61 of similar Kwame Nkrumah interchanges in Ghana, and then you see how Ghana would have looked like. Very, very beautiful. This amount is also equivalent to about 2.5 times the amount that we wanted from China. That is the Ghana Sino hydro deal. And then if you are also distributing this to every Ghanaian using a population of about 30 million, every Ghanaian is going to get not less than 180 cedis.
Okay.
So basically, one would say it is not money, but it is money, because looking at these scenarios that I have given, it shows what we want to, given what our priorities are. You would realize that there is much that oil can do. Now, looking at the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, if you look at, for instance, Section 21 of the Petroleum Revenue Management Act, it gives a long list of priority areas. It is endless. So what happens is that successive governments would have to determine what their priority area would want to be. So I am, from my expertise, I think that priority areas should not be determined by a party manifesto, but priority areas, for instance, should be determined by a national development plan, so that we all know where we are going to. Now, if you look at the section 23 to it is very, very broad. If you look at between 2011 and then 2016, the then government chose agriculture modernization, roads and critical infrastructure, amortization of loans, and then capacity building. Fast forward to 2017, 2019, agriculture modernization, road and critical infrastructure, physical infrastructure and service delivery in education, physical infrastructure in health, and then all that. Now, when you do an analysis, you realize that over the period, the health sector, for instance, has received only 2.6%. That is, if you look at 2017, the health sector received 2.61%. In 2018, health sector received 2.7%. In 2019, 3.65% of oil revenues. Now, what is the key question here? COVID-19 has taught us a lesson that if you are looking at a key priority sector, the health sector is not a sector that you should joke with. But look at how much of revenues has accrued to the health sector over the years. So this is something that we need to discuss.
Okay.
Again, if you look at Section 21.4, it makes mention of we have to invest in public investment expenditure. And then the law is not clear what public investment expenditure is. So, for instance, one party A or an individual A can say that maybe mass distribution of food during lockdown is a public investment expenditure. Party B would say that free SHS is a public expenditure. Party C would say that free universities is a public expenditure. So there has been some lack of clarity on certain areas.
Okay.
So the PRMA, we've made input into the PRMA, and then it is undergoing review, and then it will come out better.
Okay. Gideon, thank you very much. If we don't come to you again, forgive us. We are very, very short on time. I need to come to my guest in studio for his final comments. Mr. Kojopoku.
Clearly, look, I want to end on refinery.
Fantastic.
One of the things that Ghanaians should understand is that refinery is not for creating jobs. Refinery is a business. We tend to hear that, and jobs are at stake. We need to, and like my brother Duncan said, you are using maybe 1,000 people to run an operation that 500 people can run.
Yeah. Efficiency
is not in the foresight. We are trying to make it a national, I don't want to say agenda, but we want to make it look like, we are going to invest in Tema Oil Refinery to create jobs. No. You have to invest in Tema Oil Refinery so that the business can be efficient and deliver the right services and products to Ghanaians. That's the most important thing. The focus is that the government, and where that government wants to put money, sell it, burn it down, scrap it. Whatever government needs to do, it needs to do it in this year. Without that, we are going to prolong what is going on there, and year on year, there is indebtedness that is being accrued in that place. So there's the need for government to decide, am I bringing in external investors? They will now run the management, invest their money, and run it successfully, instead of trying to now go and create another dinosaur in the Western region with all these oil and gas enclave they want to do and whatever. You need to attend to what you have first, solve it, make it run efficiently before you can go to other things.
Fantastic. Let's go to Mr. Duncan Amwa for his final comments. Do you have him on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, please. If you can do that for us in 30 seconds, I beg of you, Mr. Amwa.
Once Kojo speaks, I think I would defer to him. We cannot continue to pretend that we want an efficient refinery, only to go and do the political things, and then in the end, we come back with debt back on our faces. And these debts sadly would have to be borne by the trotro driver who had no idea at all how we manage these establishments. And so the earlier we decide as a country that we want things done in a certain way, the better. If we do not want a refinery and we think that the fuel importation business must proceed, then we must decide strongly on the refinery. Same applies to BOS. If we do not think that BOS has any major role to play in getting Ghanaian sustainable fuel prices as and when international market rates are quite high, the earlier we also found something to do with it. If we commercialize it, we'll privatize it, the better, because their losses only become debt on the neck of Ghanaians to bear at the end of the day.
Mr. Amwa, thank you very much. That was Duncan Amwa. He's the Executive Secretary for COPEC. We also had, he joined us via the phone lines. Via Zoom, we had Gideon Ofosu PSR, Sustainable Energy Extractive and Climate Specialist. He spoke about the PRMA and the changes we're going to see. And in studio, we had Mr. Kojo Poku, CEO of Gasep Oil. We want to say a very big thank you to all our guests, especially Mr. Kojo Poku, for coming in studio. Our other guests were online. They were in the comfort of their homes and offices, that he came in studio to join us. So I want to say a very big thank you to you, Mr. Poku.
Thank you very much.
So this is it for Spotlight Business Edition. My name again, Philip Nanfuri. The show was packed, a lot to discuss, but we tried to squeeze it all in. We'll do it again another time. Have a good night.